Lacquer art craftsmanship, in ancient times people's mouths, such as pearl of pearl, vermilion, rhinoceros skin, etc., all originated from lacquer art. Through the means of carving, inlay, painting, depiction, and decoration by craftsmen, various exquisite and beautiful lacquer artworks are made. As the youngest disciple of the master, Su had no chance of inheriting the sect. However, an auction would lead to the sect's betrayal, and the master fell seriously ill. For a time, the once glorious studio was heavily indebted. Su used her strengths to cleverly navigate between various merchants in order to save her sect. She thought that saving her sect was within reach, but her senior sister's framing led her to fall into the abyss again. The dream of inheriting craftsmanship for thousands of years is about to be shattered at the sight of it being smashed. She still chooses to let go of all the previous things and stick to her original intention to set off again. As the saying goes, long winds and breaking waves may come at times, just hang the cloud sail and sail to the vast sea. Keywords of the novel. No pop-up window for paint of 100 miles, 1 kilogram of paint of 100 miles. Download the complete set of TXT, and read the latest chapters of Paint of 100 Miles, 1 kilogram of paint of 100 miles. Chapter 1. Contract Controversy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Contract Controversy. The night fell low, scattered with scattered dots of light in the distance. The sea breeze poured into the courtyard along the water surface, and the triangular plum swayed her waist in rhythm. The lights of the lacquerware studio lit up one by one. The hard-working lacquerists continued to be busy with their work, but only Ihue stood up and walked outside. He stretched lazily and glanced at his watch. Standing outside the window, he shouted to Su, who was painting inside, "Xiao Su, it's time to finish work. Senior brother, please have chicken soup." Su looked out the window at Ihue, who was frowning and making eyes. She quickly ran out and said, "Second senior brother, please keep your voice down. Everyone is working." Although it was a tone of complaint, Su received this concern. Ihue lowered her volume and slowly moved her mouth, trying to make Su see the pronunciation and mouth shape of each word as clearly as possible. "So what soup will Xiao Su have today?" Although Su ignored him, he quickly chased after her and pretended to be quiet, approaching her, pulling his sleeves, hat, and so on. After a few minutes, Su finally couldn't help but laugh. She joked, "Senior brother, why do you know to drink soup every day? Are you really confident that master can entrust the studio to you?" Ihue's reaction was quick, and his face sank. He replied very seriously, "Do you want this blessing for you?" Su knew that Ihue was joking, but not to mention that the apprentice was angry. He learned quite the same thing, and the two of them looked at each other with a smile. With a smile on her face, Su remembered something bothersome and took a heavy sniff. "Senior brother, please don't make fun of me. I'm just a little transparent and can eat well. But to be honest, if you take over the studio, maybe I'll have a better life." Su is well aware of one of her shortcomings, which is that sometimes the axis is compressed, and she doesn't know how to adapt to any situation. Therefore, she is often exploited by her fellow disciples for her labor. Ihue is really scared. Every time he comes back from a business trip with his master, her workbench is filled with instructions from her senior brothers, such as the third senior brother's painted bowl waiting to be polished, the fifth senior brother's painted beads needing to be drilled, and scattered things being pushed to Su. He doesn't understand how difficult it is to refuse others. "Xiao Su, why do you sound so strange to me? Did something happen?" Su pouted, "What can I do? What else can we do? Just being bullied." Although Ihue had just reminded her senior brothers a few days ago to take on orders on her own, and if she couldn't finish them, she would take out a commission to seek help from others. Don't always think of prostitution for free, but there are always those who are determined to come and find it unpleasant. Su licked her lips and paused for a few minutes before slowly saying, "It's just that. Senior sister Sue wanted to change the contract with me without my consent, so she changed it. She didn't expect Su Jingjing to directly take away her contract and then dump a contract she didn't even know about, claiming to exchange it with her, but throughout the process, she didn't ask if she wanted to exchange it. Ihui shook her head and frowned, saying, "Oh, the forest is really big and there are all kinds of birds. Besides, our forest is not big either. How dare Su Jingjing dare?" Suli sighed and continued, "The problem is that I didn't even see the contract. She took it away as soon as I finished the process. Yeah, I didn't even see a piece of paper in the contract and it was taken away." Su Jingjing is really good at timing the process that was finally completed. Yi Hui quickly guessed that Su Jingjing should have been eyeing Su Li's big cake for a long time, just waiting for Su Li to finish the preliminary work before making her wedding clothes. Is this the Chen family home that I introduced last time? Su Li is very grateful to Yi Hui in her heart. Although she has also won several awards, companies like Chen's Home Furnishings currently do not seek out unknown lacquer masters like her to connect with high-end customization customer channels. Yes, I just communicated the details with their company. She said she would take it now. Unconsciously, the two of them arrived at a Chinese restaurant and chose a seat by the window. The waiter greeted them with familiarity, and Ihui said to the waiter, as usual. The waiter quickly served tea and dishes, and Ihui first brought Su Li a cup of plain water to make sure the water temperature was moderate before putting it in front of her. "Which company is the contract Su Jingjing gave you?" MOMO space, the contract states that there are 3 types of craftsmanship for making rhinoceros skin, mouth, and carved lacquer, respectively, for making tableware, jewelry boxes, and small ornaments, and the given time is also very short. As you know, senior brother, not to mention rhinoceros skin and mouth, just carved lacquer, we can make a finished product, which can be less than a month, more than a few months, or even longer. However, the contract she signed for these 3 types is only given 6 months, and the quantity of each category is also quite large, and the theme is also very detailed. I really. Yi Hui washed the dishes and said, "Does Mr. Zhang know about this? Not to mention carving lacquer, it takes a lot of effort to make one, and then there's the mother.in.law lacquerware jewelry box. It takes a lot of time just to choose the materials, not to mention polishing and cutting mother.in.law. Finally, there's the rhinoceros leather craftsmanship, which also needs to be layered and added layer by layer to create an effect. If she signs this contract, she can't be considered dead." According to the previous contract signing process in the studio, Mr. Zhang should not have allowed this kind of thing to happen. In similar situations, the 2 people would discuss and confirm with each other before going through the process to sign the contract. But now what's going on with this one? He is also a bit confused about the operation of the studio. Su Li continued, "Master, didn't he go to the lacquer art seminar? And the contract matters have always been under the responsibility of Master Ding Muqing. Master rarely asks about them. Master brother Ding Muqing. Yi Hui doesn't know much about him, but it's enough. Ding Muqing is a close friend of the master and also the first disciple of the master. The master doesn't have any children, so he's probably the heir to the studio. That's not surprising. Although my business is independent, your business is all in the studio. Ding Muqing and Su Jingjing grew up together as childhood sweethearts, and he helped Su Jingjing exchange your contract. To be honest, I'm not surprised. Although Ihui is the second senior brother, Su Jingjing entered the school before him. Su Jingjing is also the orphan daughter of her master's comrade in arms. For more than 10 years, her master's mother has been loving her as if she were her own daughter, and she met Ding Muqing much earlier than when Ihui became a disciple. Therefore, their relationship is definitely extraordinary. Su Li held her chin in both hands and sighed, "But you have to ask me what I mean. I didn't want to exchange it with her. After reading the contract, I don't want to exchange it anymore. She's a contract that the entire studio has to work on for a year and a half. Friendly reminder." Be sure to read preface. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Forced closing. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 2. Forced closing. For most of the month after her busy schedule, Su Jingjing ended up exchanging words without saying anything or even explaining, which was too bullying. The more Su Li thought about it, the more angry she became, and she simply turned her grief and anger into an appetite, munching on the roasted lamb chops. Alright, it's not a big deal. You eat slowly, drink some soup and press it down. Isn't there still me? What are you afraid of? Said Ihui, picking up another chopstick of green leafy vegetables for her, saying it was important to have balanced nutrition. After nibbling on the grilled lamb chops, Su Li felt much better and her previously frustrated mood also came out. Okay, but I have a question. Ihui obediently put down her chopsticks and said, You ask. She scooped up a spoonful and said, Senior brother, do you really like to drink black chicken stewed ginseng soup? We've been drinking it for almost a month now, and I've gained weight. Can we exchange it for another soup? Isn't that right? Who can bear to drink black chicken stewed ginseng soup every day, claiming to supplement nutrition? Seeing her figure growing like blowing a balloon, Su Li was really worried. If she continued to drink like this, she might have to change her wardrobe. I thought you liked to drink, that's all for now. Let's switch next time. After saying that, Ihui added a spoonful of chicken soup to Su Li. On the other side of the mountain, on the other side of the sea, there is a group of Smurfs. The bell rang out untimely, accompanied by vibrations. Su Li took out her phone and saw that Chow Chow had arrived. The caller ID showed that it was actually the master. She quickly swallowed the chicken soup, grabbed her phone, and answered the call. Master, good evening, where are you? Go back to the studio immediately. There is a batch of overseas orders that need to be expedited for production. Okay, master, I'll go back to the studio right now. After hanging up the phone, Su Li didn't even wipe her mouth before preparing to leave. Ihui paid the bill and followed behind. Let's go, I'll go back with you. The two of them hurriedly took a taxi, but fortunately, the restaurant was very close to the studio, and the taxi only took 5 to 10 minutes. As soon as I arrived at the entrance of the studio, I saw my master anxiously walking over and saying, hurry up, it's really too late. Master, aren't all the overseas orders being processed by senior brothers? Why did it suddenly become urgent? Don't say anything, your fifth senior brother has argued with me several times, saying that he's not comfortable here and there. I think he just doesn't want to make this batch of goods. When he asked urgently, he said he leaked the word. There's a good place to go, so. Sigh. Master Zhang walked very fast, and Su Li followed behind listening intermittently. Master Zhang's eyes were wide open in anger, and the veins around his neck were bulging. Ihui quickly stepped forward to support Master Zhang. Although the young old man's body was usually tough, he was quite angry this time. These 5 junior brothers are too shameful. They should have finished everything, but suddenly they stopped doing it. Who will clean up the mess for them? Master, first have a glass of water to calm down the fire. Master Zhang took a sip of his tea and breathed a sigh of relief, saying earnestly, Su Li, your group of senior brothers, including your first senior brother, second senior brother, Su's senior sister, and you, have made me a little more worried. But your first senior brother is responsible for the operation and daily maintenance of the studio, and Jingjing has recently taken on another big order. You, as the second senior brother, have basically left independently, and you are the only one left as a teacher. You must do well. Our craft cannot only focus on money. After listening to her master's words, Su Li's heart rippled, and a burning heat emanated from her heart. Didn't she choose lacquer art because of her love? Master, don't worry, when I first started learning lacquer art, I focused on its unique craftsmanship and cultural heritage. In recent years, lacquer art has become increasingly niche, and they have been so glorious in history. I'm really afraid that no one will remember their existence someday. Su Li loves lacquer art and has always been attracted, deeply impressed by this craft from the inside out. Master Zhang took Su Li's hand and couldn't stop patting her back. He said softly, "Good kid, I'll leave this matter to you, senior brother Wu." Fortunately, he has done almost all the previous steps, and now it's all polished. After wiping and polishing, this batch of goods can be shipped out. Su Li was also not ambiguous, knowing the master's temper and habits. He quickly took out a small notebook and a pencil to record the mess he was about to take over. But the recording should start with asking questions. The master said that the previous steps have all ended, and he definitely needs to carefully check them. Then there are the polishing requirements for this batch of goods. Depending on the shape, usage method, and pattern, there will also be different polishing requirements. Although it is the final work, this is also one of the important steps in lacquer art. Su Li looked at the master with a prepared expression on her face and said, "Okay master, can we also use 800 mesh, 3000 mesh, and 5000 mesh sandpaper to polish this batch of goods? Do we need more details?" Master Zhang was very pleased to see Su Li's serious and diligent demeanor. It was quite tiring to ask her to take on this matter midway, but this child didn't say anything and took it on immediately. Moreover, what he said just now was also very pleasing to his heart. It seems that he underestimated this child a bit before and thought that the girl's family couldn't bear this hardship. Now it seems that she is a good seedling. Use these 6 sizes. 800 mesh, 1000 mesh, 1500 mesh, 2000 mesh, 3000 mesh, and 5000 mesh. After grinding, apply transparent paint. Remember to dry the transparent paint in the shade this time, repeat the drying process 5 times, then dilute it with turpentine oil in a 1.5 ratio. Wipe the paint surface with a cotton cloth, and then clean the remaining paint with a dust-free cloth. Be sure not to miss anything. After drying in the shade, apply a thin layer of polishing powder and repeat the polishing process carefully until the paint surface reaches the initial mirror effect. Finally, use your hands to polish it. Remember to do every step perfectly. Zhang Shifu said. Picking up the teacup, it's truly unforgettable for time. Speaking so much now makes me feel very tired. Although Su Li has been writing vigorously, Yi Hui is not idle beside him. He has been adding water to his master all the time. He has never seen his master drink so much water in one breath before. Fortunately, he is not so angry anymore, and his demeanor has become much more friendly. Moreover, his gaze at Su Li has changed. This old man probably noticed Su Li's kindness again. I have recorded everything, but Su Li still had some doubts. Master, I have taken down everything you just instructed me to do. But what exactly did you do with the batch of goods? Master Zhang picked up a box directly from under the table, which seemed to be well prepared. Take a look, a set of large lacquer tableware with rhinoceros skin patterns. Remember to handle the details carefully, this is very important. She opened the box and found a very exquisite set of tableware. Although it was not polished yet, the color was already very eye-catching. The paint color of the tableware is a deep blue like a starry sky, dotted with spots of different sizes and colors. The patterns that have been polished out are clearly visible. A bowl, a plate, and a chopstick are lying quietly in the box, which is so pleasing to the eye. Friendly reminder. Be sure to read preface. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Misconduct in the Heart. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Misconduct in the Heart. Su Li knew that she needed to start working immediately, otherwise she wouldn't be able to deliver on schedule. Before Master Zhang could speak, Su Li issued a customer expulsion order, then I'll start now. You should go back and rest early. Coincidentally, second senior brother is also here, so let him take you back. If it's too late, Shenyang will have to worry. Yihui knows how to send people off. As soon as Su Li finished speaking, he helped up Master Zhang and walked towards the door. Master Zhang had to turn around and said to Su Li, "You dare to make fun of me now? I want to see what you look like when you have a lover." At this moment, Master Zhang's face softened a lot, but these disciples became more and more restless. However, there were more boys in the studio, so it seemed that he needed to think carefully about how to deal with Lao Wu's affairs next. As soon as the two of them left, Su Li received a message from Yi Hui, saying that he would come over to help after seeing off the master. However, another message also caught Su Li's attention. It turned out that not only Brother Wu, but also himself, had received an offer over there. The treatment conditions were indeed not comparable to those of the studio, especially since the others had given too much. Su Li pondered for a moment, thinking that she was just the youngest disciple and had received offers at such a price. It seems that this company wants to eat up the entire studio, so others must have also received them. What should we do? The studio is the lifelong effort of the master, and it cannot be acquired just like this. At least it cannot be done here, and the second senior brother will definitely disdain it. As for the first senior brother and Su's senior sister, who are both potential successors, they will not leave because of money. Su Li is really not sure that the remaining senior brothers will stay. After all, the other party has given too much. I also have the contract with Chen's Home Furnishings, and I need to get it back as soon as possible. At least that money may solve the urgent needs of the studio. Senior brothers, can you keep a few? The next morning, Su Li was on the lounge chair, covered in a navy blue knitted blanket. When she opened her eyes, she saw Yi Hui lying on the table, a beam of light just right hitting his face, from the forehead to cheekbones, and then to the chin, every angle just right highlighting the edges of his face. Su Li only remembers that the two of them polished their lacquerware all night long, and it wasn't until after 5 a.m. that they were about to finish the task. They had forgotten about the acquisition they were supposed to tell Yi Hui about, and they had also forgotten about getting back the contract with Chen's Home Furnishings. Now they just feel a bit dizzy. With a loud click, the door of the studio was pushed open, and a man in a suit and leather shoes entered, holding a dark briefcase in his hand. His golden-rimmed glasses shone in the sunlight, exuding a sense of luxury. "Hello, may I ask if anyone is there?" Su Li rubbed her eyes and woke up Yi Hui. The two of them stretched lazily and opened the door together. The man didn't seem to have expected this scene and thought he saw something he shouldn't have seen. He immediately turned around and prepared to leave. Yi Hui grabbed her own hair and, puzzled, grabbed the man's back collar. "What are you running for? Who are you looking for?" The man touched the frame of the mirror and raised the corner of his mouth with a smile. "I don't think it's convenient for you. I'll go out and wait." The two finally realized that this person seemed to have misunderstood something. Su Li quickly stepped forward and explained, "We worked overtime here too late last night, so we squinted here for a while. We came here so early, what's up with you?" As soon as the man heard this, he sorted out the collar that had just been wrinkled by Yi Hui and said, "Hello, I'm Pan Wusheng, the person in charge of Jiaxing Group's China region. I came to see Professor Zhang today. May I ask if he is here now?" Jiaxing Group is a multinational corporation originating from Singapore, with involvement in various industries, including but not limited to hotel and tourism, international trade, catering services, cultural arts, etc. They are interested in acquiring Master Zhang's lacquer art studio. "Are you looking for my master?" Su Li asked. The man pulled out a magazine with the cover of Master Zhang from his briefcase and said, "Professor Zhang Yiqing, the leader of the lacquer industry." Su Li was completely unaware of the subtle change in Pan Wusheng's expression and led him into the room. "That's right, it's not work time yet. Why don't you come in and wait?" said the person who couldn't stop speaking. Pan Wusheng glanced at Su Li and for some reason, he felt that Su Li seemed familiar, but he couldn't be sure. "Okay, that's troublesome. How do you call him?" The simple words, Su Li, floated out of Su Li's mouth, but Pan Wusheng felt that he was further away from the answer. But he just responded with a smile. He had intended to shake his hand, but someone else grabbed it first, Yuihui. Su Li. Isn't this name the person I've been longing for? Pan Wusheng began to gather all the information about Su Li in his mind, and then a happy smile flashed by. It's really you. Through chatting, Pan Wusheng learned about the general personnel structure of the studio and Su Li's achievements in lacquer art in recent years, but he did not mention his intention to come. He didn't know what Su Li would react to, nor did he know what other people in the studio would react to, but he had already determined that the value of this studio was far higher than what was estimated in their report, only slightly higher. After drinking a few cups of tea, Pan Wusheng began to be curious and insinuate, "Do outstanding lacquerists like you often work overtime? Does it hurt your boyfriend to death to work overtime frequently?" Su Li looked up at him and said with a smile, "I don't have that time to make boyfriends. I don't have enough time just to learn these crafts. We also work overtime occasionally, which is considered the least overtime in the industry." Pan Wusheng heard Su Li say he didn't have a boyfriend, and his heart began to fluctuate. He had originally planned to acquire this studio, but now the people inside have to accept it. When he first took over this project, Pan Wusheng was also very hesitant, but now he is grateful that it is his next move, and indeed, the heavens have their own arrangements. Teacher Su's passion for lacquer art must be due to his unique craftsmanship, which is why he was able to join Professor Zhang's studio. No matter how the acquisition goes, you still have to leave a good impression on yourself. After all, it's been so many years since we last met. Will Su Li still remember him? In fact, Su Li has an impression of his name, but it has been too long. She can only vaguely feel a sense of familiarity, but cannot quickly determine whether it exists. Su Li could never have imagined that meeting Pan Wusheng again would be in such a situation where the other party wanted to acquire their own workplace. Pan Wusheng was also surprised by the sudden reunion of Su Li, but he began to have doubts about Su Li's existence again, largely because Su Li was special to him and he was afraid that he would abandon his work principles because of her. Friendly reminder. Be sure to read preface. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Immortal Thief's Heart. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Immortal Thief's Heart. The two were chatting haphazardly when Yihui suddenly came back with breakfast in hand, followed closely by Master Zhang. Su Li quickly welcomed him and said, "Master, this is Pan Wusheng, the person in charge of Jiaxing Group's China region. Mr. Pan, this is the person in charge of our studio, Professor Zhang Yiqing." After Su Li finished his introduction, Pan Wusheng followed Master Zhang into the office. Master Zhang greeted Pan Wusheng to sit down and asked Su Li to brew tea. Pan Wusheng smiled and said, "Professor Zhang, I've heard a lot about you. Today, I saw that you really live up to your reputation." When Pan Wusheng reached out his hand, Master Zhang hesitated for a second before shaking hands with him. For some reason, although it was the first time we met, Master Zhang was very disgusted with Pan Wusheng. "Mr. Pan came to my doorstep early this morning and waited. I don't know why he came to see me, this bad old man." After finishing speaking, Master Zhang pushed the teacup to Pan Wusheng. The teacup was held in his hand, and he just smiled and said, "Professor Zhang, you are a leader in the lacquer art industry. Our group has heard of your work for a long time, and we really hope to reach some cooperation with you." Looking at the teacup in his hand, Pan Wusheng's lips kept rising. He carefully examined it, and the mirror-shaped teacup had a reddish texture, with a small amount of mother.in.law sprinkled on it. The small and exquisite teacup undoubtedly added to the appreciation of the large lacquer teacup. Master Zhang blew the tea and said, "Listen to what you mean. Your company wants to customize the works of Mr. Zhao." At first, I couldn't understand Pan Wusheng's intentions, but just now I saw his expression of admiring teacups. Master Zhang also had some idea in his heart, but he wanted to come to him to search for treasures under the name of some labor subsidiary company. Pan Wusheng cautiously put down the teacup in his hand and replied, "Of course, I can't wait." Pan Wusheng had long heard of Master Zhang's strange temper and planned to come for an interview, so he prepared a comprehensive plan in advance, especially Master Zhang's smooth temper. If anyone dares to speak up, it will definitely be a hard fight, and in the end, nothing good will come of it. Master Zhang touched his two little beards and said, "Well, since you want to customize lacquerware, let Xiao Su take you through the process later." Although it is a niche hobby, lacquerware also has rich and colorful strokes throughout the history of various dynasties. As a leader in the lacquer industry, Master Zhang's works are naturally in short supply, with only a few works produced each year. Each piece is either auctioned off at a large auction or collected by a museum. The lacquerware studio, on the other hand, is mainly composed of the apprentices of Master Zhang in the production of lacquerware, and was specifically established to inherit this craft among the disciples. Pan Wusheng's expression did not relax, but became even more tense. "Of course, we need to follow the process. I have another plan to discuss with you, and if there is anything wrong with it, please criticize and give me your guidance." Master Zhang smiled and said, "Criticism and guidance are not appropriate. We should communicate with each other, and it is inevitable that there will be disagreements." After thinking for a moment, Pan Wusheng took out a stack of paper from his briefcase and said, "Are you saying that this is our group's acquisition plan for your company? Can you take a look first? Perhaps I was planning how to talk to Professor Zhang about this matter from the beginning, but now that I have really spoken it out, I am at a loss." Master Zhang didn't take it over either, but muttered thoughtfully, "Acquisition plan." A wave of disappointment surged in his heart, and he had planned to personally take him to see the production process in the studio, but now it's completely useless. "Yes, you heard me right. Our company has a very high evaluation of your studio and is also very interested in the cultural inheritance of lacquerware. We hope to progress and grow together with your studio." Pan Wusheng's attitude is sincere, his words are sincere, and he shows respect both inside and outside. Master Zhang has experience, so he doesn't want to waste time on this matter. When starting a studio, this situation is often encountered. Those people initially said they wanted to invest, but later intervened in the production and material selection of the studio, causing a mess for the studio. From then on, Master Zhang rejected these people who had ulterior motives. "I won't read your acquisition plan anymore. Please go back, old man. I have never planned to sell my studio, Su Li. See you off." The tea in the cup was still steaming hot, but Master Zhang had already turned his back, and the little old man was probably already angry. Su Li glanced inside the room and quickly gestured with her hand, "Mr. Pan, this way, please." Although rejected, it was also expected by Pan Wusheng. He was not surprised, nor did he feel discouraged, and was already brainstorming how to improve in the next meeting. Without giving up, he placed the proposal lightly on the desk and said, "Professor Zhang, I'll leave the acquisition proposal here. If you have time, take a look. Our group is very sincere." A black line couldn't help but fall on Su Li's forehead. The master had already clearly expressed his refusal. How could this person have such thick skin? Master Zhang still turned his back to everyone, and his deep voice slowly spoke out, "Su Li Yi Hui. Please leave Mr. Pan." Yi Hui looked impatient and said, "Mr. Pan, I'm sorry, please leave." Pan Wusheng pursed his lips and turned to Su Li, saying, "Miss Su. This is my business card. If Professor Zhang changes his mind, please make sure to contact me." Su Li fell silent selectively, and Pan Wusheng put the business card directly into her hand. When she regained consciousness, Yi Hui had already sent the person out. Yi Hui had just sent the person out here, while the senior brothers were clocking in one after another to work. Looking at Su Li who was chasing after her, he grabbed her hand and said, "Little junior sister, what did that person do just now?" Su Li was obviously startled by the sudden pulling force. Looking at the 6th and 7th senior brothers in front of her, she thought of the email digging the wall and instinctively replied, "Customer." Upon hearing this reply, the two of them obviously didn't believe it that much. At this moment, Senior 7 touched Senior 6's shoulder with his shoulder and said, "You old 6, if you can get Senior 2 to take you out, you must be a big customer." Sure enough, the charm of gossip is unstoppable for both men and women. When Ihue returned, he looked at the two people whispering and raised his hand. "Stop gossiping. Hurry up and go to the pastry shop where the master often goes and buy some Longjing tea cakes." Upon hearing Ihue's words, the two of them spread their hands and said in unison, "All right, we're all going to buy Longjing tea pastry. It seems like we're not a big customer, it's just a big complaint. After all, it is only when Master Zhang is in a bad mood that he needs to buy Longjing tea pastry." Shenyang felt that it was too sweet and not good for his health, so Master Zhang kept restraining his love for pastries. Therefore, only when he was in a bad mood, his disciples would buy it to comfort him. The new book requires everyone's support. Remember to collect and recommend tickets, dear friends. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Contract Controversy, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 6. Sudden Termination of Lease. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 7. House Leakage. Unexpectedly during continuous night rain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. House Leakage. Unexpectedly during continuous night rain for Su Li, this news was like being struck by lightning on a clear day, scorching both inside and outside, as if she had been fried in an oil pan. Whenever the wind was stronger, she would now be blown to ashes by the wind. People who are wandering outside, it's not easy to move their homes once. This time, they suddenly notified me that they want to move, so where can I move now? Su Li asked sorrowfully. "Ah. You notified me so suddenly, and I have already paid you the rent for this year. How could you do this?" After listening to Su Li's words, Dan Jie finally regained a trace of love from the cracks. "At most, for 3 days, I can return the remaining rent to you after the rent is terminated. There's nothing I can do in the future. Can you understand me? If young people work hard, they will definitely find a house. 3 days. It can be considered that she has fought for some time for herself, but she may not be able to find a suitable house in 3 days." Su Li began to calculate where her luggage would be suitable to move in 3 days, and perhaps she would talk to Dan's sister again, and she would give her a few more days. Su Li pursed her lips and spoke in a slightly teary tone. "Dan Jie, then I won't be able to find a new house for a while. I can't control it anymore. 3 days later, we'll close the room. You can figure it out for yourself." This time, Dan didn't show any mercy and hung up the phone. Hello. Su Li didn't finish speaking, but she also understood that Dan Jie was already a very good landlord. During the time she moved in, she felt that she needed any furniture, so Dan Jie would buy it for her. Moreover, she agreed to the price without saying a word. Since there were only 3 days left, let's pack up our luggage ourselves. Su Li wiped his face with a hint of helplessness, and his originally moist eyes were wiped dry like this. The car was parked at the entrance of the studio, with Su Li's back to Ihue and her shoulders trembling slightly. Ihue first honked the car horn twice, reminding Su Li that she was already waiting for her to come. But Su Li was still immersed in the sadness of needing to suddenly move. He could only shout loudly, "Xiao Su Li, get in the car." Upon hearing Ihue's voice, Su Li quickly threw a damp tissue into the nearby trash can and turned around to respond, "Here we go." Ihue watched as she got on the car, closed the door, and fastened her seat belt, not as leisurely as before. She became very anxious and her movements accelerated a lot. Su Li's abnormality caught Ihue's eye, but he couldn't ask directly, "What's wrong with you? Why is the person wilting when answering the phone?" Upon Ihue's question, Su Li's small face turned red again, and her previously organized emotions seemed to be coming out again. She tried her best to restrain the suffocation that was about to erupt, and worked hard to circulate memories of happiness and beauty in her mind. It was obvious that Suli restrained herself, with a hint of helplessness and anger in her pitch-black eyes. Her voice was hoarse and she said, "Second senior brother, don't ask. The landlord informed me to move, and the house will be closed in 3 days." The landlord's light and ethereal words, to take the house, and Suli had to pay the price for it, finding new agents, looking at the house, and paying rent. Overall, many things happened to 00. In the big city of Noah, I don't want to be difficult or feel like I'm taking advantage of it. Suddenly, Suli felt that this was so difficult and couldn't think of a suitable place to stay. "Oh, are you going to be kicked out of the house? Why don't you come to my place first?" Although Ihui didn't spare anyone, he didn't want Suli to get into trouble. After all, the old lady's illness alternates between good and bad, and she might one day, but Suli doesn't want her relationship with her second senior brother to become strange because of this matter. After all, she is a lonely man and a widow living in the same room. If she is found out, she won't have to work in the studio anymore. "Thank you, senior brother, but I'll just look for it first." Suli refused very decisively, which was also something that Ihui had not expected before. After all, the relationship between the two has always been good, so it's not a big deal to stay for a while. Furthermore, Suli's personal safety is also very important. If Suli can live in her own home, her various physical data will become more direct and clear in the future. With this in mind, Ihui still decided to let Suli live in her own home. Ihui raised his eyebrows and forcefully stepped on the gas pedal. With a loud bang, the car drove quickly past the intersection and then stopped steadily on the side of the road. He said to Suli in a low voice, "You are stubborn, where are you staying? What are you messing around with?" On the right side of the road is an EMS store, which has the most EMS branches in the country and is also very convenient for shipping overseas, so the studio has been cooperating with them. After getting off the car, Ihui skillfully took out the package to be sent from the trunk, and Suli followed behind. Suddenly, a strange yin-yang voice said, "Brother, there are differences between men and women, especially since your elderly family has a rich nightlife. I don't have this kind of luck as a young person." There were too many packages, and Ihui couldn't carry them alone. The bag containing the package had to be dragged on the ground. Suli quickly walked forward and the two of them carried the bag into the store together. Her voice trembled like a tiger's body. "Since she didn't want to, let's wait for her to go out and suffer. Then she can perform another heroic act to save the beauty, which may have a better effect. Alright, you can tinker with it. I can always reserve a bedroom for you at home," she said. In fact, when Suli heard Ihui say she wanted to leave a room for herself, she was moved. She was grateful to have met a good senior brother like Ihui, who had already helped her enough and couldn't make any progress. Suli chuckled shamelessly, "Thank you again, senior brother. Where are you going to rent a house? What kind of roommates will you encounter? I don't know how much rent has increased now." These are all issues that Suli needs to consider at present. By the time the two of them finished sending out their packages, the sky had already darkened and there was even a light rain. The raindrops were falling densely, hitting the lawn and pedestrians. In the distance, someone had already propped up an umbrella, and the colorful umbrellas scattered everywhere in no time. Under the rain, the wind also joined in the fun, blowing gently at first, like the first gear of an air cooler, then the second gear, beginning to make people feel its power. Suli sat in the car, occasionally reaching out the window to feel the gifts of nature. On the way, she met an old man selling Maltose and asked Ihui to stop, saying she wanted to get off the car and buy some Maltose. At this moment, the wind returned to its previous gentleness, blowing gently. When Suli was buying sugar, in addition to the sweetness of Maltose, there was also a familiar taste in the wind. The cool woody tone has a very light taste. Although mixed with the wind, Suli is very sensitive to this smell because that person has this smell on them. The new book requires everyone's support. Remember to collect and recommend tickets, dear friends. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Crushed Maltose. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Crushed Maltose. Years have passed, and Suli thought she had already forgotten, but when she really smelled the smell again, she instinctively turned around. Because he always likes to hug himself from behind, but I always feel like he's holding a child, so when the fragrance approaches, I immediately turn around and bury my head deep in his chest, the position closest to his heart. Feeling the beat of his heart, he would place his chin on top of his head until he felt his breathing was not smooth and pushed him away. He would then gently release himself and lower his head to touch the tip of his nose. At that moment, Suli saw himself in his eyes, and the young man smiled at him with bright eyes and teeth. Suli always felt that it was a seduction. He jumped onto him and launched a chicken-pecking attack, holding onto the person's face. However, in the end, it was often due to the lack of oxygen in his brain that he was kissed. Malt sugar can also be considered as the beginning of their relationship. Suli saw Wang Huijin for the first time and invited him to eat malt sugar. He felt that Suli gave him too little sugar and said that Suli was stingy. Another gust of cold wind blew, and Suli suddenly woke up from his memories. He had parted ways because he wanted to study abroad, and Suli wanted to stay in China to study lacquer. It was okay for just 1 or 2 years, but later there were gradually differences, and the two parted ways. Little girl, there are 13 pieces in total, WeChat or Alipay. There are several creamy white Maltose on the old man's name. They were originally a large piece of Maltose, but they became fine when hammered. Just like the relationship between Suli and Wang Huijin, shattered by the hammer of fate. Suli murmured to herself, 13. Lost. Ha, yeah, with so many fitting numbers, what's the point for someone who has long been separated? Suli handed the master 10 yuan banknotes and 3 yuan coins, and carried the bag back to the car. Xiao Suli, what did you buy? Ihui curiously pinched the bag of Maltose. Suli took a deep breath and calmly replied, malt sugar. Don't tell me, you haven't eaten it. Hui's hesitant gaze was filled with unfamiliarity. I've tried lollipops, marshmallows. Maltose. I seem to have a slight impression. Suli squinted her eyes and said, think about it, Maltose. The car suddenly quieted down, and Ihui carefully searched her brain. In an instant, a memory with the words Maltose appeared. Ihui was pleasantly surprised to find that there was indeed something about Maltose in her mind. Isn't this the Maltose on the ingredient list? Regarding Hui's question, Suli said, otherwise. Suli saw Pan Bushing again at the summer Carlisle auction 2 weeks later. She followed Master Zhang to deliver the studio's items, and Pan Bushing raised a plaque on behalf of the company. An unexpected encounter. Pan Bushing was very surprised in his heart, always feeling that it was fate's arrangement. But Suli didn't notice him, just obediently followed his master and was introduced to the familiar masters by his master. When the distance between the few people was slightly closer, Pan Bushing slightly raised the corner of his mouth and extended his hand to Master Zhang. Master Zhang, long time no see. Master Zhang seemed to have some difficulty remembering who came, but still smiled and said, hello. It's been a long time no see. After shaking hands with Master Zhang, Pan Bushing looked at Suli with fiery eyes, ready to extend his hand again. However, Master Zhang walked back and stood between the two, listening to another master introduce Pan Bushing to him. Old Zhang, Xiao Pan is a very good younger generation, with a keen eye for art appreciation. If we have the opportunity to go out and explore together, we will definitely gain a lot. Master Zhang smiled and nodded, but there was no other verbal response. The master saw that Master Zhang was not very interested, so he quickly changed the topic and said, Old Zhang, could you please show everyone your masterpiece at auction today in advance? Master Zhang said, coincidentally, I also want to see your masterpiece. Why don't we take a step forward and exchange ideas? As soon as they finished speaking, everyone around them came together in a lively manner, eager to follow the masters to broaden their horizons and enhance their personal appreciation of art. Su Li looked at the gradually growing crowd, and she had already been pushed out of the master's sight by this group of people. She was about to call out to the master, but the figure in the hallway not far away looked very similar to the fifth senior brother. After passing through the crowded crowd, Su Li finally arrived at the corridor, but the person's figure had already blurred. 5. Before the last two words could be spoken, the hoodie was picked up from behind and said, "What kind of dance is it? The auction is about to start, and I want to dance. Next time, my senior brother will take you to sign up for a dance class. I have arranged all the works auctioned by the master, so come with me and sign for them." Senior brother Chi held Su Li as if holding a chick, and then he turned his hand. Su Li made a 360-degree turn and landed smoothly. Just across from them was the work waiting for them to sign for it. After landing, Su Li was stunned for a moment and pulled on senior brother 7's sleeve, excitedly saying, "It's senior brother 5. Senior brother 7 squinted his eyes at her, silently worried in his heart. Can't this child be fooled by me? I didn't hit so hard, did I? Looking at Su Li's gradually lively face, he was certain that he had not made a heavy move just now. Fifth senior brother. Where is it? Didn't he take leave with his master? You must have read it wrong. Let's go with my brother quickly. Su Li looked resentfully at the position where senior brother Wu had just stood, and followed behind senior brother 7 with a hint of disappointment. The Carlisle Auction Company has arranged the auction location at a private winery in the suburbs, where participating artists and auctioneers can enjoy both art and the beauty of nature. In particular, tables and chairs are arranged outdoors for private communication, scattered throughout different scenic areas of the winery. The man in a suit and leather shoes glanced at the surroundings and took out a cash check from his pocket. This is the deposit, you take it first. Once you receive the item, the final payment will be credited immediately, he said, faced with a casual remark from the man in the suit. Sweat seeped out of his hands in an instant and he hesitated, but I have already agreed to jump. I've been transferred to your company. Do you really want to achieve this? The man had a calm face, his eyes afraid to meet the man in a suit, and he didn't dare to take the check from the man in a suit. His back was slightly curved, his whole body slightly hunched, and he leaned against the chair listlessly. The man in the suit looked at the man and calmly said, "What does it mean that we should achieve this level? Don't talk nonsense. You chose our company entirely because our company offers good treatment." The man's pupils shrank slightly, and he felt his self-esteem completely torn apart at this moment. It was a man in a suit who found him and kept saying that their company valued his talent and offered him a generous salary, which led him to choose to switch jobs. But now the new book requires everyone's support. Remember to collect and recommend tickets, dear friends. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Suspected 5 Senior Brothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Suspected 5 Senior Brothers. Suddenly, a bird flew from a distance and landed on the man's shoulder. The black feathers of the bird didn't shine for some reason, but its mouth kept emitting a mournful cry. Ah ah ah. The man in a suit looked at the black bird on his shoulder and said, "Today's incident was because you said my father was critically ill and needed 300,000 yuan for surgery. I did it all to help you. If you don't want to, you can stop at any time." He then picked up his cane and gently drove away the bird. Perhaps the cane accidentally touched the man's body, and the man suddenly stood up. Originally, his eyes were wide open, and his veins bulged from his neck to his forehead. The man slowly lowered his voice and said, "Okay, I'll do it. But my father still needs a large amount of nutrition after surgery, so I need 500,000 now." He made this request, which seemed to be expected by the man in the suit. He replied to him with a smile on his face, "No problem, once everything is done, we will deliver the goods and pay for them." The man didn't expect the other party to be so decisive, and then lowered his head into endless silence. The man in the suit emphasized, "I'll be waiting for you at the coffee shop downstairs from the auction company." Yes, job hopping can also be considered a normal need, but once a man is about to do something, it is not an exaggeration to be expelled from the school, and it may even be a disaster of imprisonment. But his father was in danger, and he had no better choice. His mother left early, leaving him and his father to rely on each other. Although my father later married several aunties one after another, those women all came for my father's money, and no one was willing to lend a helping hand at a critical moment. I really had no other way out. As the clock rang, indicating that the auction was about to begin, the man in the suit pulled his cane and left with a triumphant expression on his face, as if what he wanted had already been taken into his pocket. The man put on his face and left when the clock rang for the second time. At this moment, the lobby of the winery has been renovated according to the needs of the auction, with auctioneers and participants entering one after another. Several art masters who were present at the scene also took their seats early on. As the door closed, the whole room became extremely quiet. It was not until today's auctioneer announced the official start of the Carlisle summer auction that thunderous applause echoed through the lobby. Ding Mu sat behind Professor Zhang with Su Li and Lao Qi, his deep facial features standing out in the crowd, but his cold gaze was particularly captivating. With the constant shouting of prices in the venue, Su Li began to ponder about seeing Senior Brother Wu again. He poked Senior Brother Wu's arm with his finger and said, "Senior Brother, I just saw Senior Brother Wu." "Okay." At the beginning, the seventh senior brother next to her couldn't sit still and quickly retorted, "What? It's clear that you read it wrong, okay." When Lao Qi went to call out to her, there were no people on the corridor, not even a dog saw a single one. It was determined that Su Li didn't want to go to work with him and wanted to sneak into the muddy waters of the corridor to fish. Fortunately, he cleverly pulled her back and wanted me to work alone. "This is impossible." Su Li saw that Senior Brother Seven's voice had become louder, so she became hesitant. Her voice gradually decreased, and she complained, "I didn't." Seeing Su Li holding his mouth, Lao Qi became even more determined and said, "Did you see it with your own eyes? You just saw someone who looked very similar to Senior Brother Wu. Be clear." Ding Muqing looked at the two of them, just like elementary school students. You were arguing with each other one by one, and he only glanced lightly at Lao Qi. He immediately quieted down. Then, Ding Muqing asked in a soft and gentle voice, "Su Li, can you be sure that what you saw must be the fifth junior brother?" "I am 80% certain that I am the fifth senior brother." Su Li instinctively pinched the corner of her clothes, her eyes constantly bouncing back and forth between the eldest and seventh senior brothers. Ding Mu raised his head slightly, his pretty eyebrows furrowed slightly as he looked at the document in his hand, but soon it unfolded flat again. "What is the reason for the remaining 20% uncertainty?" Senior Brother Qi couldn't help but feel a sense of joy as he listened to Senior Brother Da's question. Indeed, Senior Brother Da is still sensible. Su Li heard nothing for a long time, until the seventh elder Martial brother bumped her gently, and then suddenly woke up and explained. "Because I really didn't see the whole face of the man, only the back and side, but the back and side are almost the same as the fifth elder Martial brother." Ding Mu followed slowly and said, "There are many people with similar backs and sides. If you don't see the front, it's equivalent to not seeing it. You two don't have to worry about this matter anymore. Take a good look at the auction works." As soon as the conclusion was drawn, the smile on Senior Seven's face became even more rampant, and the uncontrollable joy was reflected in the rhythm of his speech. "Okay, Senior Brother." Su Li shrank her neck, hating that she hadn't seen clearly for a moment. "Now, Senior Brother 7 and said, okay." Senior Brother Qi chuckled twice and looked at Su Li arrogantly, "I just told you you were wrong, right? If you don't believe me, I'll give up now, right?" The two of them are about the same age, and Su Li always quarrels with Senior Brother 7. They always have to compete for a winner. Su Li, of course, was not convinced. After all, she was still very confident that the person belonged to senior brother Wu, but she was also hesitant. Every time senior brother 7 spoke louder, she began to back down, but I still. Senior brother Chi twitched his lips and said, "What are you?" Senior brother has come to a conclusion, you still have so much. It was you and me who started the elementary school chicken-like bickering. As the two argued, they became more and more aware of the situation. The people sitting in the front row looked back intentionally or unintentionally, with a look of disgust in their eyes. Ding Mu casually put down the documents in his hand and said to the two children, "Be quiet, both of you." With the warning from their senior brother, the two of them closed their mouths, but the gaze of someone who wanted to cut a knife couldn't be hidden. The auctioneer, dressed in a bright green qipao, stood in the spotlight and said, "Next up, I believe everyone has been looking forward to this work for a long time." From Professor Zhang Yiqing, a renowned lacquerware expert, Professor Zhang's Lushan painted plate with gold and full painting. As we all know, Professor Zhang is the leader of our lacquerware industry, and the original intention of auctioning this work was for the out-of-school children in mountainous areas. Therefore, this work is not only a work of art, but also a practical tool, and a transmission of our love. The auctioneer standing on the high platform carefully observed the expressions of the participants, watching them whispering. Her gentle and pleasant voice immediately continued, "Therefore, our Professor Zhang has specially come to our auction venue today. Please let Professor Zhang say hello to our participants." The participants followed the auctioneer's gesture, and with the cooperation of the lighting engineer, the light pillar had already illuminated Professor Zhang's position along with everyone's gaze. The new book requires everyone's support. Remember to collect and recommend tickets, dear friends. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Auction Fair. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Auction Fair. Professor Zhang slowly stood up, first bowed to the host, then waved to everyone, and the microphone was also handed over in a timely manner. I am very fortunate to have appreciated so many great masterpieces with everyone, and it is thanks to everyone's love that my works were able to be filmed. For this auction, all proceeds from my work will be donated to the China Youth Development Foundation. After speaking, as Professor Zhang returned the microphone, there was another thunderous round of applause in the audience, with bright smiles on everyone's faces. The auctioneer stood on the stage and solemnly bowed to Professor Zhang, devoting love and gaining hope. I thank Professor Zhang on behalf of the children. Professor Zhang took a bow and slowly sat down, nodding to the auctioneer with a smile as the auction continued. Next, let's all appreciate this work from Professor Zhang Yiqing. Lushan painted gold full painting lacquer plate. This work was created by Professor Zhang in the autumn of 2019 while attending a lacquer art seminar in Lushan, Jiangxi, under the rendering of beautiful scenery. With the introduction of the auctioneer, the artwork was placed on the big screen, and the physical object followed the footsteps of the etiquette lady to come to everyone. This lacquer plate is made entirely of black lacquer as the base color, and the surface of the plate is embellished with mother.in.law. The autumn landscape and forest lines of Mount Lu are outlined with gold strokes, and then filled with mother.in.law. Although the entire work is realistic, the brilliant colors of the inlaid mother.in.law make it full of the beauty of light art. The work was placed in a velvet texture brocade plate, and with the presentation of the etiquette lady, it was finally placed on a display cabinet about 1 meter away from the auctioneer. A circle of ambient small lights was added around it, and the base began to rotate. With the refraction of different light, the lacquer plate bloomed with wonderful colors. The auction of Lushan painted gold and full painted lacquer plate starts at 1.12 million renminbi. With the sound of the auction hammer, it can be considered that the auction of this work has officially begun. The auctioneer started bidding, 1,120,000. This painting from Professor Zhang Yiqing, the leader of the lacquer art industry, titled Lushan painted with gold and full painted lacquer plate, is truly a rare masterpiece. 1,150,000. Have you ever made it to 1,180,000? 1,180,000. The auction proceeds of this work will be fully donated to the China Youth Foundation. Is there a higher one? 1.2 million. Do you have a higher bid? 1,220,000. 1,240,000. 1,260,000. Telephone commission. 1,280,000. Who wants to add 1,300,000, 1,320,000, 1,340,000? 1,320,000. 1,400,000. Is there a higher bid? 1,420,000. Telephone commission. 1.46 million. Do you want to add it to 1.48 million? Written commission. 1.5 million. 150,000 times. 1,500,000 2 times. Is there anything else that needs to be increased? 1,500,000 for the last time. With the auctioneer's 3 hammers fixed, dong dong dong, deal done, let's congratulate this collector. 6 hours later, as the participants left, the lights on the venue began to go out, officially announcing the end of the Carlisle summer auction. There are people who are delighted to capture their favorite items, those who curse and curse after receiving the items, and some extraordinary experts who fight against injustice. In short, each person has their own joys and sorrows. So let's start packing this piece, shall we, said the after-sales staff of the Carlisle Auction Company. Professor Zhang reluctantly glanced at the lacquer plate for the last time and finally signed his name and date on the seal. After all, it was made by oneself. According to Professor Zhang, as I get older, every time I sell an additional piece of work, it feels like I have sold a child. I used to not have this feeling when I was young, but now I really sell one piece less. Ding Muqing supported his master's arm from behind, while Su Li and 7th senior brother followed behind one by one, seemingly silently bidding farewell to the departure of this work. The man in the facial genie watched Su Li and his party leave, but he held a package exactly like the one he had just packed for Lushan painted gold-painted lacquer plate. Master, I'm here to pick you up. Yi Hui drove his fecal fork at the entrance of the winery, and the car didn't stop yet, rushing to greet everyone. Su Li glanced at the heartbroken master and quickly walked to the front of the Yi Hui car. Shu's 2nd senior brother, the master is not in a good mood. This really confused Yi Hui. Even though I received news that my master's work had been sold for a good price of 1.5 million yuan, I still feel depressed at this moment. Isn't it said that the auction price of the master's work is very good? Why is there still a bad mood? You know, that's not just a work for the master. The master likes to use it as a cold cucumber in the summer, and now the master can't even taste the cold cucumber. Su Li helplessly spread out her hand. Yi Hui had no choice but to shift to P gear and stop temporarily. It's not the plate of the master's cold cucumber salad, but it's clearly the one with the black painted and gold painted landscape pattern lacquer plate. Did you remember it wrong? The focus now is which plate does the master like to use for cold cucumber salad? Is it okay to have a heavy heart as a master? Senior brother 7 was on the side, his eyes almost rolling out of the sky. He couldn't help but speak up and say, "Can you two calm down a bit? Master is feeling so uncomfortable and still fighting there. And there's also Yi Hui, where does he look like a 2nd senior brother? Master, you were able to be absent from the filming of your work today. I really admire you." Yi Hui originally wanted to explain the reason for his absence, but his senior brothers, smiling back, immediately cooled down the scene, which was originally filled with gunpowder. The master said to invite us to have iron pot stewed goose tonight. Upon hearing these words, Yi Hui felt like he couldn't even hold the steering wheel in his hand, and his already big eyes widened even wider. Senior brother 7 was even about to drop his chin. Not to mention, Su Li's mind was full of doubts. Senior brother is truly a senior brother, still supporting Professor Zhang with ease. Professor Zhang, who originally looked worried, couldn't help but grin his lips to his ears. There must be some sadness, but the 1.5 million yuan auctioned off can definitely help many children. Thinking of this, I think it's worth it. Of course, we want to celebrate, so the master invites you to have iron pot stewed goose. Professor Zhang clearly had a completely gloomy mood before coming out, and could make some contributions to this society. He felt that it was best for his work to leave him in this way. The new book requires everyone's support. Remember to collect, recommend tickets, and receive monthly tickets. End of this chapter.